Psychopath in Your Life. I'm your host, Dianne Emerson. I'm the author of the book Psychopaths in Our Lives, My Interviews, which is available on Amazon and iBooks. I got a couple of interesting letters this last week, actually emails, and they were basically asking me the question of, can't you just give me a list of things to look for because I'm worried about this particular person in my life? Well, I really wish I could, because that way I would just write a blog post and be done with it, and the whole world would know how to figure them out. But it's all about the observations, because the really good ones, it could take a very long time to put the pieces together. That you probably won't find a lot of the things on checklists that really apply to them. And so for starters, I'd like to read you a small piece from Anne Rule's book about Ted Bundy. She had actually worked next to him at a crisis center hotline in the early days, and also maintained a friendship of sorts. So she probably wrote the definitive book, and it goes this way. Okay. Ted has been described as the perfect son, the perfect student, the Boy Scout grown to adulthood, a genius, as handsome as a movie idol, a bright light in the future of the Republican Party. I'll leave that one alone. A sensitive psychiatric social worker, a budding lawyer, a trusted friend, a young man for whom the future could surely hold only success. He is all of these things of none of them. See, that's where it gets to be complex. I bet you there's been probably about 1 million tunes over the years about breaking up. Breaking up is so hard to do. But what they really don't address is what life with the psychopath would do in breaking up with them. For example, if you find that you're working for one, or you have one in your personal life, the last thing you want to do is make an abrupt breakup. In the workplace, clearly you've got your family to consider. You need the support. But the very most important thing is that if you don't do it correctly, they will do everything in their power to go out to get you. For example, one of the psychopaths in my book, Fred, he had a relationship that broke up in a way that he wasn't comfortable with. He didn't like it. And so what he did was he circled back to make sure that the person got rightfully punished in his mind. In other words, shredded them. And then he felt like the breakup wasn't successful. So you read a lot of forums and things and places that will say, oh, no contact, that's the way to go. Well, yeah, ultimately it is the way to go. But before you go that far, you need to be real clear about who you're dealing with. For example, a lot of times I'll see these, articles or these videos, and they'll talk about everybody in that cluster group as being all the same. They lump in borderline personality disorder, they lump in psychopaths, narcissistic personality disorder, and they're not all the same. The one that kind of go together are people get narcissistic personalities confused with psychopaths. Well, not all narcissistic personalities are psychopaths, but all psychopaths have underlying narcissistic personalities. So you see how it starts to get kind of confusing to figure out which is which. And before you start making any life changes, it's important to know who you're dealing with, because there could be some very serious consequences, both to your reputation, your life, your well-being. The better ones, when I talk about them as the better ones, I really don't mean that they're better than anybody. What I mean is they're much more sophisticated. They've had a higher level of upbringing. So what happens is, if you go to break up with one, you've got to figure out first, who are they? I mean, what is your criteria going to be? Well, the main thing you should be looking for is, do they have a conscience? For example, it's kind of like that Rockefeller guy that I talked about a couple sessions ago, that his thing was dogs. He would get these handicapped dogs and walk around Central Park. People would see him, assume that he was a pet lover. I mean, basically, empathetic people like pets. Why do you think there's a cat video will get millions of views on YouTube. Well, because A, they're funny, and B, because people have a soft spot for cats and dogs. So they know how to use the things. So that old criminal checklist as far as torturing animals, I talked about that a couple episodes ago, isn't necessarily going to hold true. Now, I don't think that they're going to openly torture an animal in front of you, but I don't think that your pet will probably love them very much because there's a sense that they'll get over, something, animals can be very instinctual. So it's very important to learn every symptom and be calculating. One thing that I found is that every victim, over all the years of my form, every victim typically suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, here's where it starts to get kind of tricky. Okay, so let's use the model that you're working for or involved with somebody that everybody seems to like. And you start to get this really weird gut reaction. You start thinking along the lines of psychopath. You go through all these checklists. You start to narrow things down. But the problem is you're probably seeing things that nobody else has seen. For example, you have been engaged with them on a more intimate level. So you might see them explode in a way that you find discerning. And it becomes very hard to explain to people. And what happens many times, like let's say you're at work and you figure out that your boss is a psychopath. Well, first of all, the worst thing you could do is to go around and start confiding in people that you think your boss is a psychopath. And here's the reason why, is that they will use, my dog Lena just came into the room with a toy, they will use every tool that they can to flip the charts on you, which they can do very well. Bill in my book, for example, he had this whole kind of like arena of different people. He had somebody who reported to him and would kind of help keep his ear to the ground over things people might be saying. And so that way he could always stay one step ahead. But the interesting thing is, one of my big questions was, do psychopaths recognize other psychopaths? And it doesn't seem to be that they do, because everybody's kind of trying to trick the last person. Let me get her. Oh, I think she's, well, sorry. I could study videography and all this for the rest of my life, but I'm here to give you a message. You'll have to excuse I spent, for example, an hour on YouTube trying to figure out how not to make my glasses glare and came up empty. So anyway, back to what we're talking about. So it's just like if you're in a relationship, and people will either have seen things about this person previously, or when you tell it to try to confide in them, it will be all news to them because they've only seen this charming, caring, wonderful person. So then what happens is this person will set up situations, if they get the idea that you're talking about them, they'll set up situations that will start to put you in the crazy box. And that was one thing that I probably heard victims say over the years, just as much as everything, was I felt like I was going crazy. Well, it's a valid feeling because, in fact, that is part of the plan to make you feel like you're going crazy. In so many different ways. I asked these guys that I interviewed for my book examples, and boy, they would pop them right off. One of them was that he would bang on the wall while you're sleeping to disrupt your sleep. Move things around, change your calendar. And, I asked him why, and he said, well, it's all just really for good fun. I don't know what you think about fun, but to me that seems very evil, to be so insidious and put your keys in another location. And then when you start to question things, see, then they can have the perfect comeback. See, I told you were starting to slip. I told you weren't thinking very clearly. I've been trying to help you along. And in one case, what one of them did was he saw that the family and friends didn't like him. So what did he do? Well, he did some really awful things that I won't talk about yet, but he was able to push the person totally to the side. I mean, really mentally. And, didn't leave any bruises, of course, because it's all a mental game. And so then when people started um, seeing this person, his victim, go off the edge because of these things he was doing in the background, he then could move in and be the stable one. So he was able to flip them all around to get them to see that he was actually a pretty good guy. So you see how he took away what they were initially thinking about him. And they manipulated it, he manipulated it into the part that he's now the hero, she's now the crazy one. So the dynamics are really important to pay attention to, because it all boils down to control. So they have to have control of things, and control is also their message. And so the last thing, well, let me leave you with a final thought. The last thing you ever want to tell somebody, once you've gone through and you've done your due diligence and you found out, oh my goodness, I'm dealing with a psychopath, the very last thing you ever want to do is tell them that you know. You definitely do not want to do that. I was actually amazed over the years because I would hear from them. That's why I decided to interview them for my book. I was actually amazed about how self aware they are. I mean, when you ask them a question, they'll come right back with an answer. I mean, I'll get more into gaslighting. That would be a long, long topic. But I'd say, well, what kind of things do you do to manipulate people? Checklist, boom, 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 boom. Um, and one of them that I found interesting was an ex hitman. And I had to chuckle, not because I thought that it was funny, but because I had seen like two Dateline shows in a row where the victim, clearly it was with a psychopath, the victim became convinced by the psychopath that this person was related to the mob and escaping from them, and so that's why they had to get isolated. And so, see, I actually thought, wow, who believes something like that? But I believed it when he told me because I just seen two docu-series about it, about the dynamics of somebody getting so brainwashed that you start to believe this person that you've fallen in love with or whatever, that he's an ex-hitman. And so anyway, it ended up fine for the person. I mean, I'm sure their life's still pretty shattered out, but um, he finally got her to move to some isolated place, and that's when he was going to try to murder her. And somehow, I can't remember all the details, but the bottom line was, I wasn't as stunned when Steve told me in his list, because he even said, surprisingly, I use a remorseful ex-hitman. In other words, a reformed person. So anyway, so we're going to wrap it up, but I would like to tell you something here. Let me find this page. I do read all your emails, but I do value your privacy. We're having kind of a glitch on our website, so I have my email address there. It's Dianne, and you have to get this right, Dianne at Dianne Emerson, DianneEmerson.com. That's the website for psychopathinyourlife.com. And there's two ways. You can just click and email me, or there's a box there. But anyway, we're having a problem getting the box to accept emails without putting in an email address. So put in whatever email you want. I have no interest in building an email list. I value your privacy. So I do read all my emails. I read all my comments. And we will be broadcasting either on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. We're not sure yet. But let me close this comment that came from Bill. What he said, and this is his exact quote: I am the person you need me to be in order to trust, confide in, support, and promote is the person I will become. Being free of unpredictable emotional reactions and guilt, I am free to be whatever, whenever, whatever, whatever, whenever, and then change them when necessary. So I'll leave you with that thought. I look forward to hearing from you. It would be an honor if you would subscribe to the show. We're going to be available on iTunes, Google Play, and live on Facebook. And YouTube. So if you would subscribe, that would be great. And I will look forward to talking to you next week. Goodbye for now and be safe out there.